Okay, so I'll do a quick roll call. Laura,
Here.
Louisa,
I'm here.
Tatiana, Amelia,
Here.
Eleanor, Heather, Christina,
I'm here.
and Caitlin. So
Here.
we're missing a few, but I think we have a quorum, so we can start, right, Judith?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a public the first item on the agenda? So we're going to start the meeting. This is a May 27th, Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. We're starting our Community Preservation Committee meeting for the month. It's a go-to meeting, and we have an agenda, full agenda. And the first item on the agenda is a public comment period. Is there anyone that's joined this meeting that has any comments that they'd like to share with the committee?
I think Eleanor has joined, and then we also have two staff members.
Judith?
Yes?
Judith?
Yes.
Yes, they finally let me in.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm all set. I'm here now, so I can hear you and everything is okay on my end.
All right, thank you.
Okay, dear, thank you.
Yeah, so we have two staff. Maybe they could introduce themselves.
So is there staff
Yeah.
from the city that can introduce themselves?
This is Andrew.
Sure.
Go ahead, Louisa. So this is Andrew. I'm a public space planner with PSOC. And I think I'll eventually be taking over the staffing for this meeting from Louisa. So I'm just kind of sitting on the next couple of meetings to get up to speed.
Okay.
And this is Heidi Burbage, and I'm a housing programs coordinator in the housing division and staff to the Affordable Housing Trust. And I met some or all of you at last month's meeting when you had your public hearing.
That's right. Great. Thanks for presenting then, Heidi, and welcome.
Thank you.
And also welcome, Alan. So the next item on the agenda, so the public comment, so there's no one here from the public, so we'll move on to the next item. And those are approving the minutes of the April 29th meeting. And Judith has them up on the screen. Hopefully folks had a chance to review them.
Yeah.
Does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes or have any comments before we approve the minutes?
I thought they looked fine. I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second that motion.
Okay, great. The next item on the agenda is review the results from the FY21 CPA survey. So that was a document that also was sent by Judith. And do you want to go through the results of the survey?
Yeah, so I made a summary of the results. I hope all of you can see them. So it was, amazing. We had 35% for affordable housing. We had 27% for open space, 31% for historic, and 6% for flexible spending. We also had a number of comments. For affordable housing, some of the comments were having enough affordable housing for all people who need it, that remain in Somerville. The other was also about the high cost of real estate in Somerville. The other comment was about use funds to renovate existing structures to create affordable units. The next comment was making sure that affordable housing is constructed with climate justice in mind. Passive housing, good insulation, and also to cut energy bills. 100% renewable energy to avoid costly renovations within a few years, and high quality, long lasting construction to minimize repairs. The other comment was expanding the stock of affordable housing in Somerville. And the last comment on affordable was Somerville's biggest challenge and my priorities. For open space, comments included finding space, maintaining and enhancing the recreation spaces, and also open spaces needs not only to provide a place for recreation, but importantly, to preserve the ecological habitats to sustain native flora and fauna, and also emphasize connection between spaces, corridors, and not isolated parcels. The next comment under open space was providing additional little pockets of green throughout the city, especially in East Somerville, and providing recreation areas for all ages. The next comment was maintaining and improving our recreation spaces. Also, the last one was, again, Somerville's biggest challenges and my priorities. The comments under historic, the first one was not sure. The next comment was balancing the needs of many historic resources in our community that need preservation. And the next comment was use money to multiply funds for historic preservation, ensure that the funds provide public access to historic sites, and make historic places and events part of the view and part of the culture. And then the next comment was preserving both our historic cultural resources as well as our physical ones. And the next was, I'm very glad this program exists, preserving both historic cultural resources as well as our physical ones. And the next was like Somerville Museum and the Armory are excellent examples of the historic buildings preserved for public uses in Somerville. Self-guided historic tours now available for walks to follow in this COVID-19 period reflect good use of CPC monies. Renovation of the waterworks, a building along the Alewife River for senior citizens, and housing is wonderful use of CPA, more of the same please. So those are some of the comments that we received.
So I think in summary, it looks like affordable housing was the greatest percentage and open space was second, but no, I'm sorry, historic resources was second and open space and recreation. And they're all within the range of each other. Heather has just arrived, so welcome, Heather. Did Tatiana arrive? Okay, so she's the only one not here. Does anybody have any?
I wanted also, to share again, just to remind us about the percentages at the public hearing. And I'll also share the percentages for the year, as we discuss the priorities, but also the percentage allocations for next fiscal year.
It's interesting that they're very different, right? The one from the public hearing was the pom-poms, basically, right? The virtual version of the pom-pom test.
Yes.
And so you see how much more went to affordable housing there, more than half. And I think historic preservation rather was third rather than second, and those two were so close. So it's interesting how different the results of the survey are.
Yes, very interesting.
I'm kind of surprised, actually.
Judith, how does this compare to previous years, if you remember from past surveys?
Yeah, so From the previous years, I will just pull out that table as well. Sorry. So for the last 2 years, affordable housing has been receiving the highest allocation, which is 50%, and then 20% for open space, and then 15% for historic. So I wanted to share with you also over there. These are over the years. These are the percentages from the Summer Street voting exercise that we had. So you can still see the differences here. But for FY19 and 20, the percentages used were 50 for housing, 15 for historic, and 20 for open space, and 10 for flexible spending. So these were agreed by the committee the last 2 years, and the previous years were lower. The housing had, I think, about 45%, and historic had 15%, and undesignated had a higher percentage of 20%.
How does the participation rate this year compare to other years?
So last year, for FY20, the survey had about 100 participants, and this year for FY21 survey, we got 36 participants. But if you compare with those that were at the hearing, so it comes to almost 80. But then if you consider the ones that also participated at the Summer Street voting, for this year we had about 308. So in total, almost 400 have kind of participated, which is similar to almost the other years as well, if you combine the totals.
The people who attended the meeting did that 80, they didn't vote.
Sorry?
So which numbers were you adding together? There was Summer Streets, there was the online survey, and then did you add in meeting people?
So the Summer Streets, the table that I've pulled up now, the ones that participated were about 308. And then for the public hearing, we're about 45, between 40 and 45. And then the survey, there were 36.
Okay.
I think in general in future reports, it would be good practice always to show the numbers of people that participated in the different surveys, just so we know moving forward.
So for in my reports that I'm going to share with you for the annual report, the figures for the figures are indicated for the numbers for the different surveys and also events.
Great, thanks for telling me that.
Yeah, this is just a summary, that I pulled out from the spreadsheet that I sent you. But if you look at the spreadsheet, the numbers were 36.
So does anybody have any other questions? No. So do you want to, so will you summarize them all together in the meeting minutes for all of the years, just so we can see the comparison?
Yes.
Okay, I think that'll be helpful. I mean, I think affordable housing is still the biggest priority. The next item on the agenda is finalizing the community preservation plan.
Yes.
So we looked at it last week, and I think last month, and I think we thought we said, you know, we wanted to get the results of the surveys before we made a final decision to approve it.
Yes. So I think the guidance that we need from the committee is on the allocations, whether you want to maintain the same allocations that were used for this fiscal year, the ones that in the table, 50%, 15, 20, and 10%, or whether you'd like to increase them or decrease them is, I think, what the committee needs to be discussing now before the plan can be approved.
So the percentages changed, I think 2 years, was it 2 years ago?
Yes.
They were increased slightly, the housing went up a few percentage points. And then I think we adjusted some of the undesignated to put into open space and to housing. I think that was my recollection a couple of years ago. And we haven't seen an increase since then.
How useful have the undesignated funds been? Is that 10% a number that can be pushed downwards, or I mean, how's it played historically?
It's played a very important role because normally we get more applications than what is in the reserve for the different categories. So for instance, this year we out of the reserve, we supported the museum. We did also support the land acquisition fund. So it's very important in the sense that, you know, when we get more projects, then we are able to use this fund to support the different projects in the different categories. Because, you know, for instance, this year we might get more open space, and yet the budget might not be enough, so we can get some funding from the reserve, or vice versa. It could be more historic projects, and so we can utilize this fund. So it's a very important fund to have.
And I think the admin is at the minimum. We can't change that number.
No, that can't change, yeah.
Right. So do people feel like the numbers some of these line items should change, or should they stay, again, the same for this year?
Well, the survey seemed to indicate that people wanted more support for both housing and historic resources, but when you look at the numbers, like there's not that much, like with the open space, if that number gets too small, there's not that many. Well, I guess actually a question for Louisa. I know that the city isn't the only one who tapped into these funds, but it sounded like there was potentially going to be sort of a slowdown in the building of parks and open space. Is that the right takeaway from our last meeting?
No, I think that there is going to be a slowdown of everything because of the pandemic and municipal financing. So I certainly wouldn't say that there will be a slowdown of parks and open space projects and not housing projects or historic or other projects, there's going to be an economic fallout from this pandemic, both on municipal and state and federal levels. So that doesn't, it's not something that's only for parks and open spaces. My opinion on this is that we spent a lot of time 2 years ago talking about calibrating this, and that it seemed the rationale behind the slight shift that we made 2 years ago made a lot of sense, to be able to have some flexibility. I don't think that we have the surveys are enough, in my opinion, to change the percentages, and I think we need to have some flexibility with the undiagnosed stuff. And I don't mean undiagnosed, I mean unprogrammed stuff. My cat is eating my flowers.
Well, is there a response to COVID that supports, you know, putting more money, say, in the community housing this year because it's such an unusual year?
Yeah, I think Heidi can respond to that question.
So we've been keeping the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust up to speed on the funds that have been expended by the agencies that are administering trust-funded housing programs. And we have seen a sharp increase in the last couple months for the demand for assistance through those programs. In particular, we're tracking the tenancy stabilization program and some of the longer-term rental assistance programs. And we did hear back from trustees at the last meeting that, you know, they're interested in the possibility of increasing the awards for programs depending on how that need continues.
I wonder, just to throw it out there, if there's an argument for increasing undesignated funding to see where the need is greatest over the next several months.
So that would be undesignated CPA funds and then putting aside for housing and sort of on reserve.
I guess I was saying that to the whole committee, and
okay.
I'm a newer member, so I'm not sure how it works. So
I think you'd have to put that, you'd have to designate where you wanted to put it. I mean, if you take a percentage out of that, then if you said you want to distribute it equally, or if you reduce it to 5%, then where would that 5%, you'd have to put that into another one of the pots of pools. That's my understanding.
So I also wanted to share maybe additional information that may help in, you know, making the decision. So we did put out the pre-applications, and we've received 5 pre-applications. But it's interesting to note that, you know, we are seeing kind of equal numbers in open space and historic. So I think with even putting out, you know, calling for the eligibility determination forms, we are likely to even see an increase in the number of applications. So it's kind of going to be very difficult, even though housing is very important, but it appears also for the other 2 categories, we are likely to see an increase in the application. And from me managing this fund, I would feel maybe maintaining this for this year, as we look at how, you know, this whole, you know, situation plays out, would be good for, you know, the benefit of all those that are interested in the fund. That's my opinion, but I was just trying to let you know that we are likely to see an increase in applications in all categories.
Judith, can you remind us what obligations we have to fund according to the categories that are in the plan?
Sorry?
How obligated are we to fund individual projects in keeping with the allocations that we are setting in this plan? If, for instance, we received the applications and after reviewing them found that we wanted to overwhelmingly support projects in one category over others, my understanding is that we still have that flexibility. This is a document that states our aspirations. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the committee decides, on the application to fund.
Sorry, Judith.
Sorry?
She's asking if we say 10% for housing and 5% for open space, can we decide to ignore that and go 15% to historic? And I believe the answer to that is no. Once we vote on our
Once you determine the allocation percentages, you can't change them.
That's why the undesignated is there, because then if there are projects that come in for housing, you can add, to that, or take that 10% and put 2% into the housing, or 5% into, if you have more in historic and applications, then you could use that. So the undesignated is what we would use.
So understanding that we're going into a year where organizations will have funding needs that are completely divergent from what the patterns have shown in the past, I'm not sure who asked the question about whether we could increase the undesignated funds, but allowing ourselves more flexibility for this year, knowing that this will be just really a different world of applications, would seem wise. And I understand and respect that these allocations have been calibrated very carefully, and perhaps even if we made a change for this year, we would reset them to these proportions for the following year. But I agree with whoever said that this year just might be a very different creature.
Well, I guess I feel strongly that we spent a lot of time 2 years ago battling out on the affordable housing piece. So I don't, and I think now there are a lot of higher risk issues with families. So I feel like that's a number that we shouldn't reduce. If we're gonna, in order to increase the undesignated, then we have to reduce one of the top three. So I don't feel comfortable reducing the 50%. We lobbied hard to get it to that point.
I also think that what might be, it seems to me in the face of the pandemic, it actually might be the housing applications are the most likely to come in more than ever of the three categories. And so, like when I think about, well, where would we place, if we were to increase undesignated, where would it come from? I kind of agree with what Jane just said, that we wouldn't want to take it out of housing in the face of this. And the others, I feel like, are pared down quite they're pretty small compared to the housing. I wouldn't necessarily want to take from anything. And I thought I heard Judith say that from her perspective as the staff person, that it made the most sense to leave things as is for now. So my inclination is to not mess with it, because again, given the breakdown, it would most logically come from housing just based on numbers alone. But of course, we don't really want to reduce that number. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that for the first time this next year, we'll be paying a debt service on the West Branch Library. So if you see that under the historic, we already are reducing the 15% by that amount that needs to go to debt service. So it's kind of difficult. And considering that we are not sure of the revenue this year, we are like next year we are likely to have a reduction.
Oh, because
How
there'll be a
long,
reduction in filing fees?
Yes, because so I received information from the state, the DOR, that they are also asking us to conservatively plan for the state match. So the state match has been reduced to 11.2%. Last year for FY20 it was about 11.5%, but now it's been reduced to 11.2%. So they are saying, despite the earlier plans, they are not very sure about the fees, whether they'll be able to, realize their goals that they had earlier said.
Well, shall we consider, I guess, a movement of accepting these ratios in the way that they are in their current allotments?
Yes. I would make that motion that we approve the budget with the percentages broken down as they are in front of us here.
does anyone want a second?
I will second that.
All right, so are there any other questions on the preservation plan? Was that the only item that we had to finalize, Judith? You're on mute, sorry. Judith, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So having agreed on the allocations, so the next would also be, in addition to approving the plan, to also approve this budget, because part of this budget is what goes into the plan. So what's in this Excel sheet is what is contained in what will be contained in the CPP, and the percentages remain the same. So we have 20% for open space, 15% for historic, 50% for housing, and then 10% for undesignated fund. So for this year, we are not likely to receive any city appropriation. So the total for the debt service is 442,000, almost 443,000, and the available funds that are estimated for the different categories, the total is 1.6 million, and after the debt service, these are the totals for the historic, which is 193,000. For housing, after the debt service, we'll have 766,000. And then for open space, we don't have any debt service, so it remains the same. So
Judith, how long are the debt service payments for? How many years are they for the library and the 314 on the housing?
I think the minimum is 30 years, but maybe Alan can help me. Alan, do you know how long the debt service is? Sorry, I don't know if Alan is still here, but yeah, it's usually 30 years.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions? Any other questions on the budget for this year? So the city, what did the city appropriate last year?
So last year was 100,000.
Okay. So we're not getting that.
We are not likely to get it. I mean, it depends on, really, these are all estimates, and this budget is
Right.
going to change, and depending on the revenue that we receive. So in November, we usually have the budget fixing, where we know the exact amounts for the fiscal year that we need to allocate to the different projects.
I can make a motion if there are no other questions to approve this budget as estimated? Or does anyone want to make a motion to approve this budget as estimated?
Yeah, so Alan has guided me. So it's for the bond, it's usually between 10 to 30 years.
10 to 30, okay. So we're going to see those hits for a few more years.
Yes, and they keep, increasing. Like if you notice, last year, I mean for FY20, the debt service for affordable housing was like 312,000. So it's increased slightly. So we also are likely to see an increase, for FY22 for both.
Okay.
Is it possible to add a footnote or something somewhere where you sort of help us track that this is like the first year of the debt service, or payment 1 out of 20 or something like that, just to keep that in mind when we're looking at this and making budgets?
Yes, sorry, let me just scroll down. So that information is going to be contained. So there's a spreadsheet here. So the debt service will be captured for the different years. So I will definitely keep track of that. What I cannot confirm is like the actuals for the years that have not yet been determined. So I can only provide a spreadsheet of what we have received, or I mean what we paid for the years that this fund has been allocated. So I cannot determine FY22, for instance, but I'll keep definitely a spreadsheet like for the last 2 years.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions on the estimated budget? If not, does someone want to make a motion to approve?
This is Heather. I'll make a motion to approve the plan as is, as proposed.
I'll second it. This is Laura.
Great. The next item on the agenda is the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust report.
Sorry, Jen, it was Heather's motion for the budget and the plan both?
Yeah, so Heather, you were making a motion to approve the overall plan, including the budget and the percentage allocation. You want to?
Correct.
And Laura seconded.
Okay. So my colleague Heidi will take us through the Affordable Trust Housing Trust Fund report.
Great.
So on a semi-annual basis, the trust staff prepares a report to the CPC about activity during the last 6 months. And I think Judith is going to have this on the screen. And some of it was covered last month at the April hearing. This report has a lot more information in it and more detail. And so in the interest of time tonight, I'd like to give sort of an overview of what's here. And then I think, you know, after that, you'll have the benefit of the narrative and the detail in the report. So I think what makes sense is for me to sort of just go through and tell you how it's laid out and where the information is, and just highlight some of the main points. So on the first page, I think that the information is divided up to show the different sources that the trust has to provide grants and loans for affordable housing development and programs. And so there's two types of funds. One is the CPA funds, which in FY20 totaled 1.16 million. And then the non-CPA trust funds, which come from linkage, inclusionary fractional payments, and loan repayments, totaled about 2 million last year. So about 2/3 of the trust funds are non-CPA, and about 1/3 are CPA, at least in FY20, that was available to make awards with. And then on the next page, there's a breakdown of both the linkage payments that were received in FY20. And since we have it on the screen, I'll just note that in March, there were a significant number of linkage payments that were received from the Federal Realty Investment Trust buildings in Assembly Square. And so you'll see that the linkage was a significant portion of the non-CPA trust funds with a total of 1.5 million. And then the next most significant revenue source is inclusionary fractional payments, which are the payments made when there's a leftover fraction when developers create inclusionary affordable units. And then if they were supposed to create 2.5 units, then the 0.5 comes in as money to the trust. And so the total received in FY20 was about 500,000. So on the next page, the first table is just a summary of all of the CPA funding allocations to housing, which I think you saw in the last presentation, but this just pulls out just the housing, and with a total of 14.4 million since FY14. Also, in my presentation in April, if you just scroll down a little bit, a lot of the time I spent was on the RFPs to give you a sense of what kind of projects and programs were funded last year, also to give you an idea of what might be projects and programs that would be considered this year. And so there was one development project that submitted an application for CPA funds, and that was for a city-owned parcel at 31 Tuff Street. They requested 1 million, and at the April 9th trust meeting, the trustees did vote to support that development, and they opted to reserve the 1 million in non-CPA trust funds. So they are supporting that project, but they're using the non-CPA trust funds for that at this time. And then there were a total of 6 housing program proposals received. And just real quickly, I'd like to sort of tick through the types of programs these are, because I think they might be of most interest to you to understand the types of programs, especially if you're thinking about what might be funded this year during the COVID-19 emergency, and what the demands might be for the different types of programs. So the leasing differential program that the Somerville Homeless Coalition operates is specifically for some of their projects that are funded by HUD, and it pays a gap that is required between what HUD funds and then what the actual rents are. And so that money goes directly to SHC, who then so the money goes to SHC, and then they pay it directly to the landlords of those buildings. And those are formerly homeless tenants who maintain those apartments over time. And that program has been funded since FY15. And many of the apartments are the same apartments. And then the next number 2 program is operated by CAS, and it's similar to 2 other programs that are funded by non-CPA funds. So there's really 3 agencies that operate this program, and it's a housing stability program where the agency can provide up to $3,000 of assistance for rental arrears or for first and last month's rent. So the purpose of that is to provide that stability and to either get somebody into housing or help them maintain their housing after they've fallen into arrears. And this is one of the programs that we really have seen a sharp increase in demand for. And it is different from the next program, which is a more longer term assistance, which can be offered over 2 years. When the agency receives the application, they need to make a decision about which program someone is, which program might be suitable to assist someone. And so for that program that provides up to $3,000, the trust advises the agencies to look at what the sustainability of the lease of the tenancy will be going forward. So if they provide that $3,000 of assistance, is that person going to be able to sustain the tenancy given their projected budget of their own over time, or would they then turn around and really be in distress very soon after and face homelessness once again? If that is the case, then the agency may recommend that person to receive assistance from something like the PASS program, where the assistance would go more over the 2 years. That program is obviously much more expensive to fund. You'll see that currently the program is supporting between 6 and 12 households, where the other program over 1 year supported over 90 households with one-time assistance. And the 6 to 12 households, it's extended, so it's serving the same households over time. And so there's a limit on how much they can provide. So those are, I think, the 2 programs that that are really of interest right now during this emergency. The 5th program was to pay administrative costs for 100 Homes program. And I'll just mention the 100 Homes program a little more later on, but it's the city's partnership with Somerville Community Corporation to purchase 2 family, 3 family, small buildings with units and rehabilitate them and then directly turn them into affordable units. And so this housing program award was for administrative costs for that program. And then the 6th award was to respond for a program that's similar to that tenancy stabilization program, and specifically to clients at their homeless shelter, which is a domestic violence shelter. And that program is not currently operating, and the contract is routing. So moving on to 100 Homes, in all of the previous semi-annual reports since the 100 Homes program started, we've given these updates. The table that Judith is showing right now shows the different tranches of CPA funds that the trust has awarded to the 100 Homes program over time. And you'll see that it's a consistent basis as SCC is able to identify properties. There's money available, tranche by tranche, where they can draw down from that. And the money is allocated to SCC on a property by property basis. So the trust holds it in their account. And then if there's a closing on a property, that's when it's transmitted for the closing. And then, so you'll see that at this point, the 100 Homes program has created 53 new affordable housing units, and those units are affordable in perpetuity. Of the 53 units, 48 of them are occupied. So that's a big win that that SCC has been able to get those units up and running sometimes it can take a little bit of time. So we're happy that that they're all, you know, in play now and people are housed in them. Table 9 gets into some sort of nitty gritty by property of how much each award was and how much has been drawn down. And so we're also really happy to see that mostly all of the funds have already been drawn down, and which is sort of corresponds to the fact that the units are occupied and that there's not a big lag. And it's understandable when there is a big lag because real estate development can be a drawn out process. But I think that this really shows that there's been success up to date with those projects. Another thing I'll point out that you'll see in the report is that if you take the average amount of subsidy per unit for 100 homes, it totals $165,000 per unit. And that if you look at public subsidy for affordable units, that's a very, very good, efficient use of subsidy to create affordable units. And I think that just points at how the 100 Homes program is a good model. And then also in this report, we included some stories about some of the households that have benefited. I was going to read them out loud, but in the interest of time, maybe I'll just let you read those. You know, someone who during the pandemic had been transferred from a hotel to a shelter. He had an expiring voucher and he was able to move into permanent housing in 100 Homes. And then there's, I think, 3 other examples of people that have benefited from the program. And then moving on to page 8, there's updates on some of the other CPA funded projects from the past. And instead of diving into those, since they are projects where the funds were awarded in the past, I think I'll let you look at those, you know, at your convenience. But if you have questions about them, I'm happy to answer them. They're ongoing, and we're hoping that 163 Glen will have their certificate of occupancy soon. And then Clarendon Hill, there has, you know, that's been a long project, and most recently there's a lot of work on the roadway improvements at the traffic circle next to Clarendon that need to be reconfigured for safety, and they got funding from Mass Works for that. And then at the same time, the development team is going to work with to make a presentation to the zoning commission and hopefully move that process along. So this table shows, going back to the housing programs, how much has been funded in the past and then how much has been dispersed. And so you'll see that some of the programs have been able to draw down all their funds. Some of them still have funds that have not been dispersed yet. And there's some notes that sort of explains some of the programs where that doesn't necessarily happen right away. For instance, the past program where they make that commitment over 2 years, and so it takes 2 years for them to draw down all the money, and so you'll see that the money hasn't been dispersed yet. So then on page 10, I think I shared a table like this at April, and this is the last thing I'll share. So this shows those housing programs that I mentioned and how much is currently available on their contracts. The 4th column shows the funds available. This is one place where I need to fix the date because this is a typo or an error. It says funds available on 5/8. It should be 5/22 because that was updated. I just didn't update that date. But the amount of the funds is current. So that's the amount of funding available on May 22nd. And then you'll see how much was spent each month. We've also had some issues with applicants not being able to provide all of the required application materials. And so the housing division has been working with the trust and with the agencies to determine what kind of accommodations can be made. And so you'll see that the Somerville Homeless Coalition, they sort of slowed down in their awards, especially in March, because they were waiting on getting that guidance from the Housing Division. So that's the sort of thing where, people have to document that they're income eligible, and not everyone has access to those kind of documents right now. And so we had to sort of do due diligence on exactly what kind of accommodations would be allowed and sensible at this time. So I hope I didn't take too much time, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I have a question on that last chart. It said there was some non-CPA trust and then CPA trust. So can you explain that?
Correct. Sure. So this chart, I included the trust-funded programs that are similar. And the first two are actually funded with non-CPA funds. And the Tenancy Stabilization Program is a program that the trust has operated, for maybe a dozen years. And a different agency, it started out, it was the Somerville Homeless Coalition. Different agencies have operated it, but it's an older program. And then once the CPA was introduced, and there were also CPA funds, during one of the RFPs, the Community Action Agency of Somerville submitted a proposal that for a program that's just really the same program, but it's funded with CPA funds. So, because I wanted to show how much funds are available at this time, I included both CPA and non-CPA funded programs here.
Okay, but the CPA, the only funds for tenant stabilization is from the CPA is the CAS funding? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, and the CPA PASS program too, right?
Yeah, and the PASS is not in that same category. I should have added that. So the PASS program, we don't consider it tenancy stabilization. It's more like 2-year rental assistance.
Okay. Okay.
But that program is funded by the CPA. They also receive home funding from HUD to operate that program.
Okay.
And the 100 Homes program, I just want to make sure I got this right. That's only for rentals, right? That's not for sales. Is that right?
That is right. Early on, there were 2 projects that were considered 100 homes that were ownership, but more recently, we've decided to sort of take them off that list because they're just much different, and really focus on the 100 homes. On the rental projects.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Is Clarendon Hill gonna take bond money for that project?
I expect that they will. And for those of you that may not have been on the CPC at the time, that the trust asked the CPA, and the CPA agreed and asked the city council at the time the BOA to issue a bond for Clarendon Hill. The project needed to progress further. There's been a lot of efforts on the part of the development team, and sort of been a slow and steady process, I would say. I think once they get through approvals from the city, then they'd be in a more they'd be in a better position to be thinking about finalizing their financing, which would include going forward with a bond.
Thanks, Heidi.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions on the Housing Trust report, or any questions for Heidi?
It's Louisa. I just want to thank you, Heidi, for such a thorough report. I haven't always had such a good understanding of what is going on and where the funds are being used. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you know, did any COVID funds get distributed to the different housing groups for support for the families in Somerville?
Yes, there is funding from HUD through the CARES program that's for the emergency, let's see, the ESG program, which is trying to just open my spreadsheet that shows me how much that is. I think I already have it open here. Yeah, so HUD allotted Somerville $750,000 in ESG funds, and that'll go for emergency rental assistance. In CDBG funds, they awarded $1.5 million, and then the city from its general budget, I think, took $80,000 to add as new funds during COVID-19. So the new funds allotted as of April 27th totaled about $2.3 million. And previously that amount in FY20 was $1.4 million. So there has been about $1.1 million in additional housing assistance funds from other sources that have been awarded during the COVID-19 emergency.
Great. Well, yeah, I second Louise's comment. This is really helpful and it's really comprehensive, so we can see over the years what has been funded and where the support has been going. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions on the report? Otherwise, we can just move on to the next item on the agenda. All right, so I guess no comments.
Yeah, please, can you please move a motion to accept the report?
Okay, I wondered if we had to do that. I'll make a motion. Can someone make a motion to accept the Affordable Housing Trust report that Heidi just presented to us?
I'll move to accept the affordable housing report.
I'll second it. This is
Second.
Laura.
Laura, thank you.
Do we need to vote after that or no?
Judith, do we need a vote?
Yes. So the assumption is you've all agreed, unless someone.
All right. So I'll just say, all in favor of approving the Affordable Housing Trust report, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye from Eleanor.
If there's anyone opposed, oh, Christina, I see. If there's anyone opposed, can you state your name in opposition? So there's no one opposed. So it looks like the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust report has been unanimously approved. And thank you so much, Heidi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
So the next item on the agenda is the FY21 budget. I think, did we already approve that on the
Yeah, we finished.
plan? Okay.
Jen, I was kindly requesting for us to move to 8.
Move to number 8. Okay. The media package. So this was submitted by Judith. We got we sent out the RFP, and so we got a response, and so that was sent to her. And I think there was just one proposal that you sent.
Yes. So unfortunately, we received only one proposal. We did extend the timeline from April 10 to April 30th, but we didn't get any response apart from that one. And the idea behind this whole project was to be able to utilize the funds for this year. So it's kind of a difficult situation because it's just one applicant, but I have also received the last 2 days like 2 emails of people inquiring whether this is still open. So I'm looking to the committee to help with the guidance on how to handle this. So we have that one application. You can guide either to extend the application, but that means we will not be able to use the funds for this year, and I'm not sure whether we'll be able to have enough funds for the same next year, considering what is going on now. So yeah, I'm looking to your really guidance on what I should do.
So the media package, the RFP went out sort of pre-COVID, and now there are sort of all these restrictions. I mean, I think it was did anyone read the proposal? I mean, I thought it was a very well thought out proposal. They responded to all the issues, but I guess, you know, can it be done now in this climate? And in this climate, is this really something that we want to proceed with? Do you have a copy of that? Can you put up the proposal that we received, Judith?
And if we did want to spend this year's funding, Judith, can you remind us what would be the timeline for how much time would they have to complete the project?
Yeah, so we are supposed to, you know, have this project at least like submitted for signatures before the 15th of June. I mean, they could do the work in summer, but I mean, it all depends. We can rush it, but the only challenge is one proposal. So is it okay to go with just this one applicant, or does the committee feel that we need to, you know, extend the time for the request for proposals, or do we not do it?
What would happen to the funds if we didn't do it?
Judith,
Yes.
the funds would go, just stay in the budget?
No.
And
So all the funds, because this is from the admin budget, so all the funds that are not utilized in the admin budget, they have to go to the general, the reserve, and then they would be included in next year's budget, but they would not be specifically held under the administration budget. So that means if we continue with this project, then we have to try and get money out of the administration fund for FY21.
So the 10%, the 10% that's in the budget now, this would come out of that line item.
No, the 5%.
I mean, the 5%, sorry, the 5%, right.
We would not lose it because it would go to support other projects if we don't use it, but it will not be for this specific project.
Right.
This is Caitlin. I would be in favor of delaying this a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, it seems like a strong proposal, but I would like to see a few more. Two, I wonder what the logistics of this getting done during this time of social distancing actually looks like, how that may affect the filmmakers. Three, I think one of the purposes of this is to generate interest in more projects and submissions. I don't know if we're going to have a problem with that in the very near future. And four, I wonder if, not to be crass or opportunistic, but I wonder if we put this off a year, if there are some really meaningful stories that come out of this terrible situation that we're in that we want to capture as part of this.
I think those are all good points. I would have no problem postponing this for those reasons that Caitlin talked about.
What was the answer to how long they had to complete the proposal under, if we approved it this year now?
I think we gave them 6 months.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah, it certainly feels like the circumstances have changed and it doesn't feel like a priority right now. And yeah, you have to question what the quality of the product would be under our current circumstances.
I wonder if it would make sense since Judith, you said you got a couple new applicants, to at least review those and compare and contrast the 3 proposals, maybe even pit, if there's one that looks most exciting, viable, talk to that applicant and explain that because of the circumstances we're postponing it, but then sort of have them in mind, on hold until further notice when it makes more sense to pick this up.
There is one complication with this, and that is, I'm imagining, Judy, that you put out an RFP through purchasing. Judith?
Judith, you're on mute.
Sorry? Hello?
Did you put out an RFP through purchasing office?
No. So because it was less than 10,000, so it was not like a regular RFP. So it was like more call for proposal. But because we wanted to get transparent, we decided to, we could have just handpicked, but we wanted to be more transparent and give people more opportunity.
So my point is that oftentimes there's a time period at which that proposal and the RFP are valid. So you just may want to check on that, which may be a moot point if we're saying this isn't the time to do it anyway.
Okay.
I think part of it too is, a lot of this, all our festivals and events that, we promote the CPA and you have the opportunity to talk to people and stuff. None of that is happening. So it's like, we're kind of on hold in limbo. So I wonder, as Caitlin said, like what would the product look like? And maybe we just go back and ask the people that responded, like, how would you do your outreach based on COVID-19 now, and would it change? And maybe get some feedback from them and other applicants, and then decide if we want to make a decision to postpone it. How do people feel about that?
So we have done that with some of our other projects where there was a big component of community outreach, but the responders were folks that were much more able to say, here's a million different ways that we're going to do this, or here's how we can shift. And since this is a small group, I don't know that we're going to have, I don't know that the money is enough to, for example, go completely online or do some big campaign. But we could put it back on them and see what they say. Since there's only one bidder, it's not like, I don't know if going back to them and saying, can you brainstorm some other ideas, and then later saying, oh, forget it, is better than let's postpone this because we're in a pandemic and it's difficult to do outreach and maybe put it out when things are better and people can be around each other.
Yeah, I'd also say they did submit it on April 30th when we were pretty well into the pandemic, and they didn't talk about, you know, the response or how to adapt. So just to throw that out there
Yeah.
as well.
That's true.
Well, they actually prepared it before the pandemic, but I just, you know, told her that we've extended the deadline. I asked her whether she would like to wait or wanted to submit. And so she decided to wait and submit later, but she had completed everything. I think that the beauty about this particular applicant, for me, was also the passion and the experience that they had also doing CPA projects. Because before COVID, most of the you know, the people that contacted me, the one thing that they were talking about was, oh, it's so little money for this kind of work that we were requesting. So I think it's maybe only after COVID that people don't have, you know, funds that they would also take on these sort of projects. But for me, that willingness to do it like more like a passion and having this whole idea about the CPA and working with the city as well, I think for me was also kind of, it was a good thing and the determination to even submit. But I mean, she's just one, we can't compare her with the rest. So I'll go with whatever the committee decides.
Does anyone have any more comments? So do we want to take a vote? Does someone want to make a motion to take a vote to postpone the multimedia project?
This is Amelia. I move to postpone the multimedia project.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll tell them it wasn't their fault.
So
Bad
Jane,
timing. Bad timing.
I do think that when we move and second something that we do need to say all those in favor and opposed, because I think
Okay.
Judith actually needs to record those. Judith, am I wrong?
No, you're not. You're correct.
And I think we also have to do that with the votes we've already taken tonight. I think in order for them to be counted, that we have to both move second and then record who's for and against.
Okay.
I wonder if other people that are on committees, that's the jam, isn't it? Yeah, so maybe we wait until the end and go back and look at the other ones. But I just know that Kristen always recorded who was for and against. And on some of these Zoom committees, they're actually doing a roll call to make sure they get it right.
Okay, so let's go back then to approving the minutes of the April 29th meeting. I'll just do the roll call. So Laura?
Yeah.
You want to just say approve or?
Yes, approved.
Louisa?
Yes, approved.
Tatiana? I don't think she's here. Amelia?
Approved.
Eleanor?
Approved.
Heather?
Approved.
Christina?
Approved.
And Caitlin?
Approved.
And the results of the CPA survey, we had a motion and a second, so we'll do the roll call. Laura, do you want to approve or not approve?
Approved.
Louisa?
Approved.
Amelia?
Approved.
Eleanor?
Approved.
Heather?
Approved.
Christina?
Approved.
And Caitlin?
Approved.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. For the community preservation plan, I think I didn't I do we do the roll call for that? I thought we did one. But let's just,
Report.
this is the report. Okay, so let's do the community preservation plan. Approval or not. Laura,
Approved.
Lisa,
Approve?
Amelia,
Approve.
Eleanor,
Approved?
Heather, Heather,
Approved.
Christina,
Approved.
Caitlin. Okay.
Approved.
So we approved the trust report. We're gonna, and included in the trust report was both the 21 budget and the 21 annual report, correct, Judith? Or should we take a roll call for those two?
You can take a vote on the budget as well.
Okay. We didn't take a vote on the budget. I thought we took a vote on the budget.
Okay.
The budget was the plan, right?
Yeah.
Was to accept the plan as it is.
Right. So let's take a roll call to approve the FY20, let's just say the FY21 budget and the FY20 annual report.
Sorry, the annual report, I haven't yet presented the annual report, but I presented the budget.
Okay, all right, sorry. So Laura, for the budget.
Approved.
Lisa,
Approved?
Amelia,
Approve.
Eleanor,
Approved?
Heather,
Approved.
Christina,
Approved.
Caitlin.
Approved.
And the multimedia package, so there was a vote and a second to postpone that that scope of work. So
Motion and a second.
there was a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Do you have the motion? Who made the motion? It was
I made the motion, Amelia.
Amelia.
Yeah.
And Louisa seconded it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Judith, if I could just add before the vote that if I could just say rather that if you went back, if there were other applicants you received that you skimmed or looked at and think they possibly have merit, maybe you could have at least just share back to all the applicants that it's on hold, and
Yeah.
you know, we could reach out to them when we're ready to pick this up again. And if you think they're worth looking at, I'm happy to look at them too, if you want to share them with committee members.
Okay, I'll do it.
And so I'll add that information to the motion. That was seconded by Louisa, and we'll just do the roll call to approve. Approve that meeting package, postponement of that scope of work. Laura?
Approved.
Louisa?
Approve?
Amelia?
Approve.
Eleanor?
Approved?
Heather?
Approved.
Christina?
Approved.
And Caitlin?
Approved.
Great. So now we're going up to the budget. Judith, what's the next item? We jumped around, so
No,
I'm
sorry,
just.
yeah, so we are going to the pre-applications. I thought I saw, and that's why I thought we jump to the pre-applications in case he needs to leave, but if he's not there, I don't know if Louisa, you can, I don't know whether you can, whether you're online, like you're on the computer and can see this pre-application for the Healy School.
So I'm
Okay.
here. I don't think at this time we have presentations about the Healy School or about the what is it that you would like me to do? I think at this point you're just saying who is applying for funding, but I don't think there's any kind of information given or presentations given.
No. So I'm sharing with the committee the pre-applications that I received. So one of them was for the Healy School tot lot renovation, and your department agreed to sign.
That's right.
Co-applicant.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So the other application that we received was for the Elizabeth Peabody, and it was for the exterior siding and trim repairs. But in their description, they mentioned that they would like this fund for repair and maintenance and restore important aspects of the building's exterior. But CPA funds cannot be used for maintenance. And I don't think this proposal requires a city department to co-sign it. So it would like fit, the regular, go through the eligibility determination stage. But so right now, this has not been shared with the city department, but again, like their request to maintain some of these aspects of the building is not allowable under the CPC fund. The other application that I did receive is from the Somerville Museum. Again, they are requesting for additional funds of about 250,000 to construct, for the construction of access for all additions to the museum's Westwood Road entrance, which is kind of unique because I thought they were looking for funds to construct the elevator, but I think there are some additions now. So I'm not very sure if this project is gonna be completed soon. But I don't know if Caitlin has any comments about this as a representative of the Historic Commission, because they always ask for funds every year, and they always add on things. So, but it also doesn't qualify as a pre-application.
This is Caitlin. I'm the Historic Preservation Commission representative. I've heard about this project, and I've seen the group come before the commission a couple of times, but I don't think I know anything more than folks do here about this proposal. I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. So Jen, do you have any comments? Any members of the committee that?
So are you asking us that, so these are three that have submitted pre-applications, and of the three?
No.
You're asking,
there are still more. So that's one of them, but I was just kind of generating a discussion about this request from the museum because they are, again, looking for additional funds.
Right. I mean, they've come to the commission. I mean, they've come to the CPA every year for many years, trying to get the elevator, to build the elevator, and it was in a lawsuit for a while by an abutter, and they won the lawsuit, but they had legal costs. So they're trying to get together funding, and they've also been raising money as well for the elevator. I mean, it's over $1 million. So every year we give them a piece of it, but not enough. And every year they come back for additional funding. But it sounded like in that proposal, it was for something totally different. So they still haven't spent the money that we've given them for the other work because they don't have enough to build the elevator. I think that's all I can say on that. And the bell tower, this came in before.
So this came in late. So the deadline was the 25th. It came in on the 26th. I don't know whether we should. I was not even sure whether I should share it with the with a city department. I'd wanted to share it with my folks in planning, but I'm not very sure because it came on the 26th.
I think you probably should check to see whether there's flexibility or not. I don't think if there isn't flexibility, I don't think we can accept it.
Okay.
So maybe just check with other staff or Kristen.
Yeah, so there's also another reapplication by the Blessing of the Bay Park Phase 3. And Louisa did give us a background when she was, giving reports on the different projects. So again, they would like for us to, they would like a city department, I think Louisa's department, to be a co-applicant, but there have been discussions about some of the things they want to do, which include sidewalks, which Louisa, I think, guided very well, that CPA funds cannot be used for, this sort of projects. I also got guidance from the city lawyer, who again advised that we cannot support that. And then I got a very comprehensive, comprehensive guidance from Stuart, quoting some of the examples of projects that should not be supported by this kind of funding.
So Judith, are you talking about Blessing of the Bay?
Yes.
So when a project fills out a pre-application, the city then decides whether to sign on or not sign on.
Yeah, and you did not, I think you're not signing on this one. I'm not sure.
Well, I have never seen the proposal, and when I asked the person to talk to us about it, I think there was a deadline she had to get on, but the point is that the there is a point at which we say yes or no to them, and I don't know if that's before or after the pre-proposals, or the whatever we're calling this phase.
I sent you the form. I did share with you her pre-application. I didn't hear from you, but this is again, she had sent an email to me asking about the same project, like whether CPA funds can support like sidewalks, which I sought guidance from Stuart and the city lawyer, and the answer was no. And I think you'd also guided the same. I mean, I'm sharing this with the committee because some of these folks might kind of, contact committee members and say we did put in an pre-application, but we were denied, so that they are aware of the reason.
But my point is that I believe that the pre-application procedure was set up to vet these projects and to understand like when the city will or will sign off on. I don't know in the past if there has been a sharing of the pre-applications and if we have discussed them. I don't know if I guess nobody else was here to remember that. But I don't know.
I know, Louisa, what you're talking about. But I think for information for the committee, I don't think there's any problem with sharing this kind of information. But it's true, you decide whether you're going to be a co-applicant or not. But because it's part of the application process, I felt I needed to share with the committee. I mean,
I think that's fine. What I don't think is appropriate is that we have conversations about what is in the application, because they have not moved on to the phase at which I think the committee should be doing that.
Absolutely, and I'm not asking for an approval or rejection. I am just giving information and discussing them, which the committee can decide they don't want to discuss pre-application. I know they've not been discussed in the past, but I was sharing because I know that I have received questions about some of them, so I felt I needed to share.
Okay, so are there any others?
No, those are the only ones. So we received 5 of them.
So you got 5 pre-apps, and then you'll go through those pre-apps with different city staff people and the appropriate, Stuart, the head of the CPA, and the city's attorney to determine whether they're appropriate for CPA funding or not. And then they would, if they are, then they go to us for review in a full application. If they're not, you'll notify them that they're not.
Yes.
Okay. So that's basically a general overview of how the process works. And usually we typically don't see the pre-apps. It's something that's done with the city staff. We only see the ones that got approved by the city going forward.
And just to be clear with everyone, I'm not bringing this up because I feel like the city has to decide this and then tell you. I'm just saying that in the past, there's never been a conversation about it. And I think, I don't want us as a committee to be speaking when we're not supposed to be, or formulating opinions when the application hasn't come in. That's why I'm bringing it up, not because I think there's some like secretive vetting procedure that's happening with the city that the committee doesn't know about.
No, and I guess if I had some comments about those, maybe those were not appropriate. But I think it was just I think because we have so many new members that it's
Exactly.
good to go through the review process of what typically would happen or not happen, and what we get involved in and not get involved in.
And
So,
can you remind the new members, so not all proposals have to go through this pre-application process. It's proposals that have some kind of association with the city.
Yeah, so there are applications that would like to do projects on city land. So in that, and also those that would like feasibility studies that they are not very sure if their projects would be eligible for the CPA funds. But I think the reason I brought this up is really I wouldn't like to discuss it like with individual members. So just for everyone to know. I mean, if you ask a question, then for everyone to know about it. But you don't have to get involved in any approvals or anything. But I can share with you the information. We received these proposal pre-applications, and these were, agreed upon by the city departments, and maybe those that were not agreed upon. I mean, we need to also share with you.
I think,
And
Christina,
so the whole spirit of sharing.
The reason that the pre-application came about was because there were applicants who, one, were applying for things on city land without, having a conversation with the city about whether or not it's even possible. And then two, there were applicants who weren't always sure that they qualified. And so this was a one-page synopsis that then the CPA manager could look at and guide folks on moving forward or not. I think that's the history behind the pre-applications. I don't know if there's something else to that, Judith, but that's kind of, it's really to help applicants either get the sign off that's required or understand if they are eligible.
Yeah, that's true. And it hasn't changed, Louisa. I think, of course, there are things that have been done in the past, and the committee can also decide on how they want to transact their business. I'm not saying that I'm presenting this for approval. I am just presenting it, but you can make a comment about it. So if if the committee is okay with not knowing what goes on in the pre-application, that's fine. So moving forward, like next fiscal year, then we don't have to even share. I know it hasn't been shared before, but for me, I was doing it so the committee members can know, because some of them have asked me questions.
okay. Does anybody have any questions about the process and how we're going to move forward with the applications? So when is the deadline? So the deadline passed?
Yeah, it passed. So the deadline was 25th.
Okay. So we don't need to take a vote on these pre-applications. We're just reviewing them for general information.
For your information.
Okay, great.
And I
Are there
think
any-
the two questions that came out of it, one is the cutoff date, you know, whether they have to be disqualified, and that's something Judith needs to look into. And the other one is, I find this legal point interesting about the public right-of-way not being able to be funded as part of, you know, with the CPA funds.
So the Blessing of the Bay project has a lot more complications to it. Again, I think what needs to happen in order for that to go forward is that the city has to sign off, and where the property lines are, those are all things that we're aware of and researching. But I don't think we need to get into the weeds of those. There are things that we're aware of, and that we've had conversations both with DCR, with the city, and with lawyers, and we haven't signed on to it yet. So again, this pre-application happened in a very strange way because we have not yet vetted it as to whether it will go forward. One question that I have though is, if you miss the pre-application deadline, that doesn't disqualify you from applying for the full application, does it? Do you have to do a pre and a full application?
I mean, if it's on city land and if you have not given your approval, I mean, to be a co-applicant, I don't know whether you can do it when they submit a full application.
No, if it's a project on city land, you have to have approval. But for example, I think the one that missed the deadline, I don't think that was a city project. Can they still apply for the full application, or because they missed the pre-application, does that disqualify them?
No, absolutely, they can apply for the full application. But they had applied last year as well, and I think they were looking for the feasibility study funds, but their project was so large because it's more design intensive. So they were requested to reapply this year, but like I said, they submitted after the 26th. So. I mean, after the 25th, so they didn't miss the deadline.
Okay, so if you're not a municipal, if you're not tied to the city, if your project's not tied to the city, then you can still submit your application. If you're tied to the city and you don't get approved at the pre-app, then you're not going to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's what Louisa is saying. If they have not co-signed, then I don't think they can.
Any project on city line, on city property, has to be approved by the city. The rest, I don't know. That was a question that I was asking. Like, is the process that you have to put in a pre-application and an application, or can you just put in an application without the pre, if it is not on city land?
If it's not on city land and you don't need a feasibility study, then you can go for the other, phases of eligibility and then full application.
Okay. So is that clear to everybody? Mm-hmm. Okay. Project updates. Judith, are we doing project updates? Yes. So we have some projects that are, you're pulling up information as to where they're at?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I shared with you one of the projects that was approved by the city council, the one of the city hall design. So that project has been pending. It was a 200,000 project, So it came before the committee, I guess in 2019 or 18, and so it was pending the approval of repurposing the 200,000 to the CPA fund. So I just wanted to let you know that it was finally approved, and so this project is going to progress. So this is a project from FY15.
Okay, so they originally received 200,000 in 2015, and now they want to repurpose that money to, for conceptual design, adding the build 1895 building to the project.
Yes.
Okay, do we need to take a vote on approval of this repurposing?
No, this is for your information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then is there any other business that we need to talk about tonight?
Yeah, so I wanted us to, for the annual report, so we need to update it with the information from the Housing Trust Fund. So I will share it with you and we'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay. Is there, so can you say that again? I'm not sure I understand what you said.
So there was approval of the annual report.
Right.
So this annual report has to incorporate information from the Affordable Housing Trust.
Oh, so you're gonna,
Yeah.
okay, you're gonna incorporate that into the annual report and then we'll approve it at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, that makes sense.
great. And the next meeting is gonna be June 24th on a Wednesday at 6:30, and it will still be a go-to meeting.
Yes.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to comment or say before we adjourn? No, we're good. All right,
We're
everyone,
good.
stay safe, and again, this is my
to adjourn.
yeah, and this is my first year as president, so I'm glad for all the help, Louisa and other members, just so I don't mess up on the protocol of the Robert's rules. So I appreciate that, and thank you, Judith, and I hope everything works out with your mom too. So meeting adjourned at 8:20.
So I think we have to move to adjourn the meeting. Sorry, I move to adjourn the meeting of the CPC.
I second that.
All right, I'll do better next time.
Okay.
Get your protocols down.
You're doing well.
Oh, should we
It's
take a roll
complicated.
call? Are we gonna take a roll call?
No, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Bye.
Meeting adjourned.